Hello, everybody, and this is Miss Debbie Bias. We are now going to finally get down to the nit grit of love, betrayal, rebound, and survival guide. God knows I wish I'd have had something like this years ago. Well, Debbie, here's what we're going to do. We're going to introduce you to the world, okay?
Okay.
On this level of you doing a book, which is pretty amazing, really. And I believe you said what, 3 years in the making?
Yep.
From inception when it came to your head, and then what you said, there was a little bit of scuttlebutt. There's people saying you should write about what, your Christianity.
Yeah. Some people thought I should write about Christianity and spirituality, and other people thought I should write a story of my life. So I thought I could combine the two. And it
Combine.
started off as a legacy for my family. And then as I started writing, it turned into more.
Ooh, well, at both of our ages, the boomers, and to all you boomers out there, we got you covered. Okay. I'm a casualty of the divorce situation myself back in the day, but not free. But this is going to be interesting, no doubt about it. So, Debbie, we're going to let the audience know something about you. Okay.
Okay.
So let's start off just a little background. You let's go into where you hail from. Why don't you tell the audience how we kind of ended up in a high school together outside of the D.C. area in Montgomery County? Take it just kind of a little bit on your background and your parents.
Okay. Well, my parents were both born and raised in rural West Virginia. My dad was in the military serving in World War II and then later in Korea when he and mom fell in love and got married. And they decided before they started a family that they did not want to raise their kids in West Virginia and transferred. Both of them were working for the VA and transferred to Washington, D.C. so they could get us in Montgomery County schools when they started a family.
And about what year? We don't want to offend anybody from West by God, as we used to say. What year would that be, ballpark? Uh,
I was born in 1953, so they must have moved in 1952. They moved the year before I was born.
okay, and your dad served in the military in World War II.
He was in the Army in World War II and then later in Korea.
Okay. All right, let's pick it up from you come over to Maryland and let's take it from there. Where did you go? Public school, parochial school, private school?
Always public school. We had a house right across the street from the elementary school. So mom could watch us get into the school door every morning. And she was standing outside waiting for us when we got out of school to walk us home.
And
So,
during
because they made us walk all the way down to the corner, they wouldn't let us, even though our driveway was right across the street from the school driveway, they would not let us cross there. We had to walk down to the corner to cross.
and did you go unescorted down to the corner?
Yes. Mom was
That's
watching
like
me
a
the whole
felony.
way.
That's like a felony today. You know what I'm saying? Your
Yeah.
neighbors would call in on you. They'd call
Yeah.
the highway patrol in on you. You're an unescorted, unattended child. Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Okay, so you go to public school, right? And
Yep.
let's talk about the parents just a little bit more in depth. So you had siblings, yes?
I have one younger sister. She's 3 years younger than I am.
And would you say that you got along for most of your youth?
Yes. We had an interesting relationship.
Explain
Uh,
for the audience what that means, because we all
yeah.
have.
Well, yeah. Well, I'm the older of two. So my mother made me responsible for my little sister. And my little sister was her favorite. So Joni was ADHD before anybody knew what it was, and
Wow.
trying to keep her out of trouble was a nightmare. So I was always in trouble, not because I did anything wrong, but because I couldn't keep her out of trouble.
So it was on your watch. It was on
Yes.
your watch that her behavior was monitored.
Yes.
And
Yes.
mom, obviously, just like any other good leader, would come to you,
Mhm.
the team leader, and say, "What's wrong with your sister?" Right?
Yep.
I understand
Why
that.
did you let her do that?
Oh my! And how about
Yep.
dad? Where did dad play into the overall family structure? What would you say on that?
Okay, well, when I was first born, until I was 4 years old, we lived in an apartment in Tacoma Park. And so daddy was around a lot before my sister was born. I would from what I can gather, from what I can remember, once Joni was born and the move to the suburbs happened, more money was required. So dad worked 2 jobs.
So you would say for the most part, he was gone or out working.
Yeah, once we moved to the suburbs, yes. Now, when it was just me, dad spent a lot of time with me. He taught me how to name every car on the road. I could tell you what every car was. I would say, that's a Ford, that's a Chevy, that's a
Very
Tootie
cool.
Baker.
Was he a
So
gearhead? What was he? Was he in the automotive trade on the side, a hobby?
yes, before he was drafted into the army, he was learning to be a car mechanic, and he
Oh,
always loved fiddling with cars, and he had worked some in West Virginia for a used car dealership, and he liked the buying and selling and trading. And I can't tell you
wow.
how many times while I was growing up, he would buy a car, we would drive it for a couple of years, he would fix it up and sell it for more than he paid for it.
My, well, that's a characteristic of, for the audience who's not a boomer, that's a characteristic of, Christ, am I allowed to say alpha male? Let's just say the manly characteristics of the silent generation or the greatest generation. We were talking about which one he is, either one of those, but that's pre-boomer. That's pre-1946, just so you know. So would you say, because this is going to play out, audience, I have an inkling, with the mom and the dad, would you say that mom was running the domestic affair in the
Yep, she sure was.
Okay, so you and I went to high school in
Mhm,
the part of the '60s, tail end of the '60s, when for lack of better terms, things were starting to free up from the red tie, blue suit, white shirt generation. Okay,
mhm.
and we were, maybe not you and I, but we became hippies. It was either hippies or you were a jock, like an athlete, and that kind of thing. So, how did your parents? We're going to fast forward just a little bit to high school. How did your parents react to the political genre that was going on right around Vietnam, post Vietnam? Probably, yeah, or pre actually.
Yeah, well, I was a majorette in
Okay.
2 different groups. So, when I wasn't at church, I was twirling, and my parents, since we were part of a very conservative and legalistic Southern Baptist church, I was very protected from what was going on in the world. And even my friends protected me in high school. They
Ooh.
used to call me Little Miss Sweet and Innocent. They would drop me off at my 10 o'clock curfew and they would go party. So
Well, now for the audience, I'm going to ask Ms. Debbie a bold question. Were you, looking back, were you sweet and innocent?
I was in high school.
Okay. All right. Well, we're not getting there yet. We're not getting to the red. We're not getting to the red ball yet. We're not getting to the sauce. Okay. I
Okay.
got it. So one step at a time. All right. So we're just trying to give a picture of our era and mom and dad in the home. They weren't divorced. They never were divorced. Am I correct? I
Mm-mm.
feel
Nope.
a little bit. And did you have any? You were a majorette, so that's like being a full time athlete. I mean, there's training, you're traveling, it's organized. You're not out running around all that kind of thing. Were
Mm-mm.
you into music? Were you a musician? I don't think we ever. You ever a musician?
I had taken some piano lessons when I was in elementary school, but I wasn't very good at it.
And were,
So
and were you a good student? What would you consider
I
yourself as a?
was an average student, a little bit above average. I
Oh,
was never a straight A student, and I
okay.
didn't think I could be.
Did you in high school? Now, for those of you that don't know out there, we went to a public high school that was massive, like 2,200 in the school. Graduating class was like 650 plus. Okay. They had a program, correct me if I'm wrong, Debbie, college prep, or you weren't in college prep. Did you take the college prep courses?
Yes, I was in the college prep.
Beautiful.
And I did have to, I think I had to keep a 3.0 in high school in order to stay on the high school majorettes.
Well, we were supposed to follow the same drill, but I didn't. I was in college prep and it brought my average down to like almost 0.93. Okay.
I'm a rule follower.
Well, you were then. Wait, we're not there yet. All right, so you go through high school, and as we all did then, did you have a first love? did you have a crush? Did you have a truly significant boyfriend back in the day? Did you have anybody during high
Not
school?
in high.
Really?
I had a boyfriend that I dated off and on through high school, but he was not my first love. Um, in fact, I kept breaking up with him because he felt too controlling to me. So,
Okay.
um,
Sounds
I,
interesting.
he was an athlete and a brainiac.
Oh, wow.
Uh,
Big combo.
yeah,
Especially back then. That was kind of a, that was kind of a plus, Now,
yeah. Well, he wrestled, he ran track um and long distance running,
okay.
but
So,
he blames me for not graduating number one in our class.
and Debbie wouldn't wow, wow. He blames you like for what? A emotional distraction.
Well, he said he was late for shop class because of walking me to my classes, and that kept him from getting the grade in shop he needed to
That's,
be number one.
well, every man should make up his own excuse, but that's not a bad thing sometimes.
What can I
Well,
say?
so you get out of high school. Well, let's let the audience in on this one. So you went to college. Is it
I
my
did.
okay? And you went to
Towson State, an hour away from home in Baltimore.
okay. Anybody that's on the outskirts of Baltimore City, up in Baltimore County, if I'm not correct, right?
Mhm.
So not a easy school, if I remember correctly. My brother went there. So, what was your reason for going to college?
My parents told me that I was going to college because they did not have the opportunity to go. So it was never a choice. Not that I was excited about going. I had no idea what I wanted to do with the rest of my life,
Oh,
other than I wanted to be a wife and mother someday.
ah, okay. Now let's talk about that for a second because that's right out of this book I'm reading by Miss Swenge called "The Generations" for everybody, and it's just out. It compares the baby boomers to the millennials to the Gen Zs to our parents' generation, called the silent generation. Pretty cool. It's a lot of interesting stats. It's not really political correctness. It's all pretty much, just the way it was. So you go to school, you're not knowing what you want to do, right? But
Mhm.
you're getting away from the house, right? Which
Yep.
is the big F, the other F word, freedom.
Yes.
Oh, and I was the same way, man. I couldn't wait to get far enough. And my parents were like Mother Teresa and the Pope. And not that they were bad in any shape or form, God rest their soul. I just wanted to roll. I mean, I just
Right.
like I'll sleep in a tent on the highway. Just get me out of here. I want to see what's going on. So did you have that view along with
Oh, yeah.
okay.
I really wanted to get away from my mother.
And the overbearing reason was on that? Because that's interesting.
Yes. That's because I was in trouble all the time with her. I never did anything right. I never pleased her, and I just wanted out.
Wow. Well, many of us followed that mantra. So you go to Townsend, okay? So why don't you explain to the audience how your world, how your world opened up? And you're talking 1971.
71. Yep.
Vietnam was wrapping up in about a year, and it was still demonstrations and things. I don't know about Towson. I went to University of Maryland, all over the place. But explain life for yourself. How what you found in college?
Well, the first couple of weeks there were a big eye opener and a shock for me because everybody seemed really normal when I first got there. And then the weekend came. And on the weekends, boyfriends arrived from out of town to sleep in the dorms with the girls. Booze came out. If the girls didn't have a fake ID to get it, then they had a big brother or a boyfriend old enough to get it. And the first couple of weekends, my head was spinning. It's like, oh my gosh, what am I doing here, living in this place with all of these sinners?
Wait a minute now. Hold on. Okay, so let's talk about that for a second. I did the same. I followed the same path a little bit. So what you were doing the Christianity thing in the house at home before college, correct? Everybody was in that genre, if you will. So you felt a little out of place.
Mhm.
you're looking around you and you realize, like I thought the same thing. Wow, is this like Caligula, or what? Is this the rest of the world is like this? And what have I been missing something? And that was my view. So did you decided that you wanted to get in the game, if you will, and enjoy yourself and put the how'd you deal with the Christianity part at that?
Well, I had some things had happened at my church the last couple of years in high school, and I was pretty angry with the pastor and
Okay.
some of the leadership at the church anyway. They, taught all the kids that they shouldn't do this, they shouldn't do that. It was against God's rules to dance, to
Ooh.
drink,
Whoa.
to
And when you were in high school?
yeah.
Wow. Boy, that's
Mhm.
really crazy. Wow.
Yep, I
In
was
the
taught that it was not okay to dance.
Not okay
So,
to dance in any shape or form.
mm-mm.
Oh my. Wow. That's really a blowback.
Yeah. So we had tried to have a coffee house one time in the education building, and no, because that was bringing in other music that wasn't Christian music.
Wow.
Um, one of we had a youth meeting at my house one time, and our youth leaders noticed some of mom and dad's old records and put one on and taught us how to do the jitterbug. Well, they got in big trouble for that. So it's kind of, and then they fired our favorite youth pastor, so that made all of us mad. So
Debbie,
I was just turned off to the church when I went to college anyway, so I was
okay.
happy I wouldn't have to go there anymore.
So you were building a little wall there. That's interesting. For those of you who are less than a boomer, meaning a millennial, and you're listening to this, watching this, and when you think about not being able to dance, it's mind-boggling. You wonder why us boomers had any type of sanity getting along with that kind of situation. Wow, that's really crazy. So, all right, let's talk about your romances then. So you're starting to drink. I don't know if you want to go into illegal or then, not today. Contraband. Did you discover contraband? You can do up to, it's up to you. Is it in the book? It's in the book, isn't it?
I didn't do a lot of drugs.
Okay.
I did meet my first love at the end of my first year of college, and he lived in Hagerstown, Maryland,
Let's talk about him.
and
Let's
was
talk about him.
taking he was taking a year off, um, and then was going back. So my junior year, he went back to Western Maryland College on a wrestling scholarship.
Oh,
And I mean, he was in a fraternity. So when I went over to Western Maryland, we were in the frat house. And I mean, he was my first love.
and you're
And
talking, hold on, Debbie, you're probably 18, 19.
18.
Okay, 18. Okay. And he was about the same age as you, I presume.
He's 2 years old. He was 2 years older.
Okay. And
He
truly your first love.
he really was.
Wow. And that's,
Um
we all can relate to that.
I just saw myself with him forever. And his younger brother was a drug dealer and introduced me to some stuff I wish I had never done, but I did them once and never again. So,
When did you discover that love of your life, his brother? How'd you find that out about the brother being a
oh,
drug dealer?
one of the girls in my dorm lived in Hagerstown,
Okay.
and she invited some of us home to her parents' house for a weekend. And from Hagerstown, we could drive into West Virginia
Hmm,
and legally drink 3.2 beer.
I
So
see.
there's this place in Shepherdstown, or there used to be, called the Red Shed.
The Red Shed, if you're out there, check this woman's book out. Okay. You are infamous. Is that in the book, by the way?
No, it's not. But I met Donnie at the Red Shed.
Okay.
So,
Red Shed.
yep, met Donnie at the Red Shed. Hadn't thought
And,
about the Red Shed in a long time.
and for our audience, I can't show you the voluminous amount of reading of Debbie's draft and all her notes and my backdrop background information on divorce stats and what age women got married at what year, 70s, 80s, 90s. But so I want to make sure the audience knows I did read the book. I did read the draft. And there were some things in the draft that I had not heard before whenever we did a little go around. Anyway, okay, so now this is interesting because this is this is where I want to kind of set the stage. So for when we get to these three X's, if you will, okay, how that kind of parlay. So did your love of your life at that time, did you still think picket fence, a home in the country? What was your vision? Or did you even have a vision? Was it just day to day, weekend to weekend?
I didn't really have a vision. It didn't matter to me where. I just wanted to love my husband the way my father loved my mother.
Okay,
And
interesting. Interesting there. So you saw, for the audience, back in the day, when, if I may say from my own observations, men weren't so outwardly display affection. All my uncles, World War II vets, unbelievable. I never saw it. I never. I mean, I know it sounds sad to the millennials and the Gen Zs and everybody else. I never saw it until I started dating other girls. Then I started seeing other fathers, and I was confused. But so your parents, in your eyes, you're in college now. They always, don't let me put words in your mouth. Your assessment now and then was that they always had a tight, loving relationship for the most part.
yes, I got the way they looked at each other.
How?
And my father
Oh,
he always took care of my mother. Like
yeah,
he would always fill her car up with gas on Sunday so she would have gas for the week.
gentleman,
Um,
gentleman. He's a gentleman.
yeah, he would hold doors, he
And some of you all out there, check on some of the podcasts and hear the definition of a gentleman and an alpha male and all that. And it's actually, just go research it a little bit. Andy Frutella comes to mind. Okay. Anyway, very good. So, what happened to the first love? What happened there?
well, we had been dating, I don't know, I guess about a year, and I think it was spring break my junior year. No, my second year, my sophomore year. He and his brother and some other guys went to Daytona on spring break, and David evidently had a bunch of drugs with him. And I don't know what he gave Donnie, but Donnie had some kind of a meltdown and
Your love.
ended up
Your
in
love.
jail as a vagrant.
Your first
And
love, Donnie. Your first love.
Donnie did. Yeah, he was picked up on the streets as a vagrant. So how he got separated from the rest of them, I don't know. What happened, I don't know. But while he was in jail, he broke a light bulb and was stepping on it with his bare feet. I don't know.
Oh,
So
my.
his dad had to drive down to Daytona and get him and brought him back to Hagerstown and put him in a psychiatric center
Oh, wow.
where I went to visit him a couple of times.
He went that far off the reservation on that one trip. He went that far. He
Yeah.
he went that. Wow. He went that askew. Okay.
Yeah. Like I said, I have no idea what David gave him. It's,
So
it's,
the relationship ended. The love affair ended. Seriously,
well, I
probably the wrong.
visited him a couple of times. I tried to encourage him. I could tell something had clicked in his brain. He wasn't the same. And so I was encouraging him to get the help he needed. And one day when he called me on the phone, he said, "Yeah, my dad told me to just get out of here. He's going to buy me a case of beer and I'm going to go down to the river and spend a week relaxing and get over all this." And at that point, alarms went off in my head. And it's like, no, no, no. The alcohol isn't going to fix this.
Oh,
He
my.
needs more help than that. And I panicked and I broke it off with him. I said, this isn't going to work. I said, you need to get the help, the professional help that you need, because I can't help you. I can't give you the help you need. And beer is only going to make it worse.
And
So
what age about were you at this time now?
I guess it was 19.
19? Okay. So,
And it broke my heart. I
oh, my
felt
God.
like such a jerk.
Hmm.
I felt like I abandoned him when he needed me,
Tough call.
but
Tough
I
call.
knew I was in over my head.
Hmm. Now, was Christianity floating around still in your brain, your heart, your?
I believe that God never left me. I
Ah,
just turned my back on him.
Ooh, for the audience, write that one down. God knows I can't say that. Wow, that's something. Okay, let's keep that because that's going to play important as we get to the others. Okay, so let's take you to the end of college, and you're dating somebody then, on and off. Okay, I think in the book his name is Roger.
Actually, it was pretty steady for 3 years.
Oh, okay.
And then,
Okay.
and then the last 6 months, he broke up with me 3 times in 6 months. And I said the third time when he came, he showed up at school after I got off work from teaching and offered to take me to go buy me an engagement ring. And I went, whoa, whoa, whoa. I said, wait a minute. I said, you've broken up with me 3 times in 6 months. That tells me that I'm not really the one you want to spend the rest of your life with. And besides that, his parents loved me. I was part of that family,
Yeah.
and I felt like they had probably pressured him to go offer me to buy a ring.
You know what? And I'm no marital therapist by any stretch of imagination or relation therapist, but a couple of things you mentioned. Family on either side is kind of interesting how that influence can correct your vision of the person in front of you. Um, I can't say for myself I ever went that route, meaning if the family hated me, but I had a relationship with the girl or whatever, but it definitely grated if the family didn't like it, that's for sure. So Roger, who you refer to in the book, everybody's going to have to read the book for the details. So, and even the FBI today would say that's a clue that it's not going to work out. So you graduate college, and
Mhm.
now your background is in education, I presume, in
Yep.
college.
Because I couldn't figure out what I wanted to be, and my grandmother wanted me to be a teacher.
There's Debbie in the audience. I'm still there. Okay, in the seventh decade. So you come out and you're totally single now.
Mhm.
Okay, so what?
Well, I mean, I dated him my senior year and my first 2 years of teaching.
And your first 2 years, okay, so it goes into your professional life. You're
Yeah,
not living with them, you're living separate and all that kind of thing.
living separate. Yeah.
Were you ever engaged before this, before that time? Ever engaged? No.
Nope.
Okay. So you're now out in the work world. You're somewhere around 24, 25,
23, I think.
24, somewhere around. So I'm gonna hit the audience with a stat from my book. Okay, I'm gonna read the average age of a married for the first time in 1970 for women was not yet 21. And like I said, and I said it in the intro, the baby boomers, we invented the divorce rate. We're the ones. Okay. Yeah, we got married early, but we didn't last for 2 or 3 years, and we went on to the next one, and then so forth and so on. And then in the 80s, the divorce rate is off the chart. By the time everybody has grown up, got a career, and there's all kind of problems. Everybody knows all about that. So you are now, I'm putting it in perspective. You thought we had discussion before. You thought you might be missing the boat because you were 24 and your girlfriends expound upon that a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. By the time I broke up, Roger broke up with me. I broke up with him, whatever it was.
Right.
Most of my girlfriends had been married twice. Some of them were on their second divorces.
Wow.
So
By the same age.
yeah. So I felt like an old maid. All the girls I went to college with had gotten married.
Debbie, I'm laughing because you millennials and you Gen Zs, she's saying 24 is an old maid. Can you imagine today? And I work with a lot of millennial and Gen Zs in my day job, to pay the rent around here. I mean, totally different view, totally different ballgame in the 30s now. Anyway, so you now let's get to husband number one. Hey, husband number one.
Okay.
So he's the one, I presume. There's three, and he's the one that covers quite a few chapters in your book. I'm going to say at least 4 or 5 of the first chapters. So for all of you, you got to read the book on the details because when myself and Debbie talked before, we got the overall like you're going to get now audience, and then I got the details. Oh man, I you know what? if I were your brother, your older brother, and I said, listen, girlfriend, you got to get out of this like right now. And yeah, I'm gonna put this cart forward just a little bit. Again, reading this other book and doing some divorce stat work. Yes, divorce rocks the world of a lot of people. But guess what? So does a miserable marriage. It's like being a POW and prisoner of war, for anybody that doesn't know what that means. Okay. And it's just pulling a cart up a hill. So you got to decide. All of us have to decide when it's time to pull the pin and do your homework. Okay. Back to Miss Debbie. So let's talk about Mr. Wonderful, is what I call Mark. So give a description and how Miss Debbie met Mr. Wonderful.
Well, he was a blind date that was set up by a girl I taught with. And I drove my own car that night because I thought, blind date, this guy's probably a real jerk. I'm going to drive myself home when I'm sick of him. So the thing is, I was charmed. He was 5.5 years older than I. He had a business degree and a minor in psychology from the University of Maryland. He had a great job with an insurance company based in Philadelphia, but he was at the Laurel office.
It's Laurel, Maryland.
He already owned a home.
Oh.
He would come, he played the guitar and could sing. He would come and serenade me.
Oh
He was just, I thought he was the most handsome, most intelligent, most incredible man. And I couldn't believe he was interested in me.
Did everybody catch this description that my new friend Debbie, former classmate, and we're almost close to the same age, about 8 months apart. You hear the way she's describing this gentleman. I'll call him a gentleman at this point. Now, let's put something in perspective, Debbie. So you said 5.5 years older than you, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So that puts him at probably 30, maybe somewhere 31.
I think he was 29 when we started dating, 30 by the time we got married.
Let's just do a little crime analysis, if you will. He's 29.5, has his own house. We're talking 1974-ish, maybe 5, somewhere in there. Okay.
We were married in 78. So we met in 77.
Okay. So let's go back to Mr. Wonderful, Mark in the book. Of course, the name has changed to protect the innocent. Not that he was innocent. So he's already really established in what was the American dream, so to speak, i.e. back to my other book, right? The American dream that we thought, the baby boomers, which hurt a lot of us, really hurt a lot of us, that our parents thought where we should be, right? Duh. So, but you just told the audience he was already going through a divorce, correct?
When I met him, he'd only been separated a month. Now I know that's a huge red flag.
Huge red flag. Huge.
He had come home from work one day and his wife had come in with a truck during the day while he was at work and moved everything out that was hers.
So when you met him, when you go on your first date, is there any talk of the soon-to-be ex on his end?
Not a whole lot. He mentioned that he was separated. He mentioned that poor guy, he came home from work and the house was empty and she was gone.
For everybody in the audience,
what kind of crazy woman would leave this man?
This beautiful hunk, right? There's this beautiful image of a man, but something is wrong with this picture, right? It sounds to me like, he knew his way around. Right? And he was in the insurance business, right? Something like that. Okay. So he was a personable individual. So take us down the primrose path of how you end up getting married to this gentleman, Mr. Mark, and then let's do a little how it kind of deteriorated for you.
Well, there's a 1 year, or there used to be a 1 year waiting period that you had to be formally separated in Maryland before you could get a divorce. And he knew that he was up for promotion to Philadelphia. And needed a wife because the company was a very conservative company. They liked their people to be married. And since his wife had just moved out on him, he needed another wife right away. I can see that in retrospect. I didn't get it then. I was ready, willing, and available. So we got engaged pretty quickly and waited for his year to be up and the divorce to be signed. And we got married like a couple of weeks after the divorce papers.
So the rocket was launched.
Yep.
On your way. Now, did you stay in Maryland? Were you staying in
He got transferred to Philadelphia while we were dating.
Okay.
And so we did the train thing in between Philadelphia and Maryland for 6 months. And then when we got married, we bought a house in Cherry Hill, New Jersey. And we lived in Cherry Hill, New Jersey for about 2 years before we got transferred to Atlanta.
Now, in your book, for the audience, there is a unbelievable, beautiful passage in the beginning written by one of Debbie's best friends, so a male, who has authored some books himself, technical books, correct?
Mhm.
And it's beautiful the way it's written. You'll have to see it yourselves. But your book theme is narcissism or narcissistic men. Am I right or am I wrong? Okay.
You're right.
Okay. So let's decipher for the audience when and what did you see in Mr. Wonderful, Mark, in the book? What did you start to see? When did you start to see the cracks in the arm? If you did, when did you?
Well, I can look back now again and see things that should have been concerning to me. One of the things when we first got married, I asked him, when, did he want to pay the bills every month? And, could we sit and do it together? And he looked at me and he said, no, we're not going to do it together. You can do it if you want to, or I'll do it, but we're not going to do it together. And that seems strange to me because my parents always did the bills together.
Well, you see, now you had a reference. You had a point of reference. And I have to say, that's interesting. Mine used to do the same thing until my mother, God rest her soul, started, harassing my dad about the way he was handling the finances. Then he throws a checkbook at her and says, you take care of it. So I don't know if they did it together after that, but that's interesting that you use your family, your own parents as
Right.
as the picture,
Right.
Going. So go ahead. So this wasn't all of a sudden, but that was kind of one of the first things, right?
That was one of the first things.
Okay.
And then I think I probably ignored a lot the first year we were married. And I think it was by our first anniversary, I was pregnant with our first child because we didn't want to wait too long because he was older than I was. And he didn't want to be such an old father. So I did notice while
Didn't Robert De Niro just have a kid, father a kid? What's he like, 103 or something? You're talking this. Mr. Wonderful's only 32 by this time.
Yeah, I think he was 32 by the time she was born.
Yeah,
But anyway, I did notice we took some disco dancing lessons while I was pregnant, and there was this cute little instructor, and I noticed that he was being awfully flirty with her, and she just thought he was the knees bees. I mean, every time she wanted to demonstrate how to do a dance step, she would use him because I guess he had danced, he had music background, he'd played in a band. And so, I didn't like the feeling of being sitting there in the side with his big pregnant belly and kind of being ignored by my husband. But I thought, well, I'm going to be the mother of his child soon. I'm the one he's coming home with. So get over it, Debbie.
What was and how far was that in? That was before your first child was born. So you got this feeling, couple small things, like a razor cuts, right?
Yeah.
So did it ever cross your mind that this was going to build to something more in that vein of the way he was acting? Was it were
No.
no, okay, didn't okay. So you were content. You liked your I'm throwing this out, cut me off. Economic status, life was good. That's an interesting discussion right there. That's a podcast in itself, the trade-off, right? The heart was in it, right? Your heart still
Mhm.
in it. And which means that when we all know when we're in and not in a love affair, but this is your husband, but allegedly the man and the woman love each other, so to speak. You might overlook certain things, right? We
Right.
all may overlook a habit, a tick, whatever it is. And then that tick, what we're going to find, well, the reader will find out that the tick that you're talking about now starts to get big.
Mhm.
Okay, so go from there to the next.
Um,
Okay.
well, the baby was born. She
Okay.
was a beautiful little girl. Um, we were both in love with her. And the first month or two after she was born, he was home from work on time every night. I always cooked a big dinner every night. I love to cook anyway, and I wanted to be a good wife. So I had a big dinner every night for him when he got home.
Oh,
And he would take her upstairs after dinner and sing to her and give her her bath and get her in bed and just be the best father. And that lasted a couple of months. And then um, as time went on, there were times because we only had one car at the time, and it was a little red TR7 sports car, two-seater.
ooh.
So I don't even remember how I
How do you
managed to
even
get
carry
the
anything
baby.
in that? It's a nice little car, but not really
I
practical.
don't remember how I managed to get her in the car to go take him to the train station and
Right,
pick him up.
right.
I, I don't remember how, but maybe car seats weren't not mandatory then.
Did he
Maybe
have did he have that car when he met you?
he got it while we were dating.
Dang, okay, gotcha. All right, so right now it sounds like to the audience, this is Mr. Wonderful. This is like he's doing everything by the book. Then what?
Then there were times I would go pick him up at the train station after work and he wouldn't be there.
Hmm.
Um, and sometimes it was, while I was waiting, I needed to feed the baby. And I would be in this dilemma. Do I go home and feed the baby? Or if I pull out and he shows up right after I pull out, he's going to be angry with me. I didn't want to make my husband angry. And I was in this dilemma. So eventually I convinced him to buy another car.
That's a big purchase back then. Any
Because of course he always had a good reason why he was late. You
ah,
know, something came up at work. There was somebody important that he had to take to dinner and couldn't get away any sooner. I mean, it was always a good reason, right?
and this is before the infamous cell phone, right?
Yes.
Oh yeah. So communication was not razor fast like it is now. Not the blink of an eye on
I'm
it.
sure he could have called me from the office while I was still at the house. He knew when I had to leave to go to the train station,
Right. For you to say that, good job. You're right. You're
but
absolutely
but
right.
he did not do that.
Hmm. So let's fast forward a little bit to the incident of him going on a trip. And again, for everybody, it's in the book in great detail. We don't have to go into that kind of detail here, but it is good for all of us. I mean, it really is. So I want you to put yourself in Debbie's place. You could say man or woman, but let's say woman for now. So he comes home from you're now living in Atlanta, I believe. I'm going to fast forward to when he comes home from the trip
Yep.
and
Uh-huh.
hanging up his clothes. So give us the backdrop on this when he
Well,
finally
I
admit.
had lost a baby in between.
Okay.
And that's kind of a crucial step because while I was pregnant with that child, he seemed to be angry with me that I was pregnant instead of happy. And I never got that. And I was so unhappy. I thought about going home, but I couldn't go back to my parents with my tail between my legs and tell them that they were right. I should have never married him. And I ended up losing that baby. But while I was pregnant, I found a condom in his nightstand one day. and I don't remember what I was looking for, but I asked him about it, and I don't remember what story he told, but it's like, okay, I guess I'm just being pregnancy hormonal. There's really nothing to it. And I just let it go and never thought any more about it.
So on that point right there, so again, from let's go back to the disco lessons, right?
Uh-huh.
You're now, and I'm asking, who am I? You're now putting the blame on yourself
Mhm.
or a misjudgment, an improper analysis, even though the physical evidence is right there,
Right.
and obviously you weren't using it, but I'm saying it was right there, and you just go by it. Yes.
Yeah, and I don't think we ever used condoms.
Okay.
I,
Oh, okay. So a flag. I'm not saying a flag. A
yeah.
red flag. Okay. So okay. So continue on. So now let's get to the scene, if you will.
So, okay. So anyway, a year after I lost that baby, or I don't know, shortly after, I don't know, 6 months or so after I lost the baby, the doctor said I could get pregnant again. I was healthy. And in the meantime, Mike had said, no, we're just going to be happy with our one. We're not going to have another one. So he had to go to Philadelphia for some kind of a trip in February, and he came home. I don't know, it was the night before Valentine's Day or Valentine's Day. And, he said, Debbie, he said, I'm going to let you have another baby, and got me pregnant that night. Um,
Now,
so
do it, and here it is. Okay, got it. Go ahead.
yeah, well, we never had any trouble that way when we wanted to get, in fact, with the first one, I ended up pregnant a month before we had planned to start trying.
Okay.
So,
So now you're pregnant.
the second one, I got pregnant right away when we had decided the time was, I got pregnant right away. So getting pregnant was never a problem.
Okay.
So yeah,
I
with,
understand. Mark,
okay. So yeah, Connor.
go ahead.
So I got pregnant, and then of course I had two.
Okay, so now let's talk about when the really big acknowledgement by Mr. Wonderful, and he admits to his infidelity, if you will.
Okay, we had been married 10 years. I remember that.
Okay, set the stage.
So
There you go.
it must have been, we got married in 78, so it must have been in 88. And I can remember I can remember it as clear as day. I was sitting in bed reading the screw tape letters. And he came in from work late again and was, putting his stuff in the closet. And I have no idea where the question came from. The only thing I can tell you is that God placed it on my heart and made the words come out of my mouth.
It just came out.
It just came out. I didn't plan to ask it. I didn't expect the answer to be yes when I asked it. And have you ever been unfaithful to me? Totally expecting him to say, no, I haven't, not ever. I told you I wouldn't. And when he said, yes,
Did he say it like that? Well, how did he say it?
yeah,
Obviously remember this moment. So
he hesitated. He
okay.
turned around and looked at me, and he said, well, yes.
Hmm.
And I went, what?
Wow.
And then I must have fired off at least 100 questions, faster than he could answer any of them. And it was like my whole world had turned upside down. The fantasy world that I lived in for 10 years exploded.
Right there
And
at that moment.
yeah, at that moment, because I had always believed that for whatever troubles we had, that he loved me, I was his wife, and he came home to me every night, even though he didn't always really come home to me every night. But at that point, after one of the last question that I asked him, and this one I clearly remember, I said, Mark. I said, Mark, I said, did you really love me when you married me? And he hesitated again and he said, well, yeah, I loved you. And I said, that doesn't sound very convincing. I said, you tell me right now, why did you really marry me? And he said, well, you were educated enough and attractive enough to help me move up the corporate ladder.
Mm.
Boom.
Ooh, boom is right, boy. That's a shot between the eyes. Ain't no doubt about that.
Right.
Well, Miss Deb, at that point, so kind of move it up to where you're ending up in real rocky ground and you're going to therapy and both of you. So you know you're on broken glass now, correct? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And does he get worse? Does he proceed? You have to, for everybody in the book, there's some details of different things that Debbie came across with the kids that were pretty bad with involving the. Correct me if I'm wrong, Mark, and there's a savage canine right there, Lucy, with Mark and taking his GFs, as they say these days, his girlfriend's out on a boat or whatever, with the kids, right?
Mm-hmm.
When did you finally make the decision, if you will, to divorce, or did he make a decision to divorce? Or did you, what was it then you were heading for grounds for divorce? Was that what you were thinking?
Well, I told him before I married him that the one thing I didn't think I would ever be able to forgive him for would be infidelity. And I was struggling because I loved him. For whatever troubles we'd had, I loved him. And I had promised before God and the church and my family and my friends to stay married to him forever. So I'm struggling with this. And then he says to me, Debbie, you know you're a Christian. I said, yeah. He said, well, you know that God hates divorce and you need to forgive me.
Oh my. Where's Bill Clinton? Is he in the audience? Holy mackerel. Well, that's something now. That's something. So, wow, narcissism on parade, right? So, okay. So you didn't, obviously, because you end up in divorce, correct? I mean, did you
Well,
initiate
I
divorce?
was still there
Yeah.
for
Okay.
another 12 years
Ooh.
before things got scary. And when things got scary, he got evicted and he fooled around for 6 months, said he was going to make some changes, get some counseling, do some stuff. But as soon as 6 months was up, the domestic violence charges dropped and he turned around and filed for divorce.
He filed for divorce. And what state? Was that in Georgia?
Georgia.
Georgia. And Debbie, all along the time, he's maintaining his career. Actually, he's moving on, isn't he?
Oh, he prides himself in being a chameleon and being whatever people expect him to be. So yeah, he grabbed onto the coattails. He left that insurance company and went with an agency and was doing reinsurance on property casualty insurance, really big stuff, really big commissions. He was making really good money.
He really was. And again, I'm just Monday morning quarterbacking it, if that's a phrase anymore. No angel myself, anybody. Okay. But to be able to manage and do all that and have strife in the background with a family and you, of course, that's a lot to handle. And then, of course, your end of it, right? And then,
Except that he didn't care. He
oh,
didn't
absolutely
care
not.
about me. He didn't care about the kids. All he cared about was himself.
I should have had the definition, which I've read it many times, of narcissistic behavior, particularly in relationships. And one of them is you don't have that care gene,
Right.
which is the same kind of a psychopath or an undercover or a operative. You're missing that gene, or
Yeah.
you can control that gene. I tell you,
And
right.
I like to say that he was a covert narcissist, because to the whole world, everybody thought he was Mr. Wonderful. Everybody thought, because I covered for him, I made excuses for him. Oh, Debbie, where is he at choir practice tonight? Gee, I don't know. Something must have come up at work. He must have had a late meeting.
Any alcohol or narcotics on his end? Any abuse of
Well, no,
himself?
he did, he did the pot in college like everybody else.
Okay, but nothing
Um,
in the work level.
no, I don't think alcohol was a problem.
Okay. And yourself, you were okay?
We went the first year that we were married, we did a lot of, binging on the weekends and getting too much. But once I started having babies, it's like, Debbie, these kids depend on you. You've got to keep your wits about you.
Okay.
So I cut it way back.
Okay.
And,
Okay.
I don't need alcohol to have fun.
Yeah.
I can have fun without it. Every once in a while, I'll have a glass of red wine. At the most, I'll have two, but it's spread out over a long period of time.
Well,
So,
Miss Debbie, I would say at our age now, why not? You know what I'm saying? I mean, when we get done here tonight, I think I'm going to have a couple whiskeys, but well, that's okay. All right, so let's. Wow. So this gentleman turned whatever. I can imagine you're going to get some mail on this one when this hits the deck from both sides. So you go through the divorce. Your kids are how old at the stage of a divorce?
well, when
And who gets
we
custody?
became separated
Okay.
and he filed for divorce, my son was in rehab at the time for substance abuse.
Okay.
And I want to say it was either 16 or 17,
Okay. Okay.
maybe 16. He was 19, I think.
And she had ADH, you said? Or?
Both of my children had ADHD, and so did Mark. Mark was diagnosed as an adult with ADHD.
When was that diagnosis?
He didn't get diagnosed until after both of our kids had been diagnosed.
Wow.
And both of the kids were diagnosed in first grade.
Ask my doctor about that. I'm gonna have a severe senior version of that. Okay, so let's now move out. So now you're out. You got scar tissue. All right.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
You're beat up pretty bad. Mentally, hopefully not physically, although there were some bad scenes. And for the audience, you have to read the book. In the chapters, there's some abusive scenes, which today I think he would have been in handcuffs. Well, he could have very well have been in handcuffs even back then. So
No, one of the worst ones, when he really hurt me, I didn't even go to the doctor or tell anybody. It's like, and he had threatened me several times that if I ever, because I had asked him for a separation several times, and he said, if you take a step out of this house, I'll cut you off without a dime. And I thought he could.
Okay, hold on now stay right there on that. So, and then I want to move off Mr. Wonderful and move on to number 2, and then your life in between. So for looking back, and it's always good for all of us, right, to have a little wisdom for your daughter, whatever. What would you say to a younger version of yourself, of somebody who was in that kind of lack of better terms, modern day terms, abusive relationship? Well, what would you say to that woman? Let's just keep it on the woman's side, because is a woman.
I would say, tell
say?
people, and when you get hurt, go to the doctor and get it documented.
Would you say?
It.
Would you say
go to the doctor? Pardon me?
Would you say jump out of the relationship at that time? Legally? Because divorce is quite legal. We both know that.
I don't know. Divorce is hard for me. In fact, it blows my mind that I've been divorced 3 times because I'm so opposed to divorce. That's tough.
It's an interesting viewpoint. I would concur with that. And of course, my current bride, and I thought I would never say I joke with my buddies all the time. We're all over the country, all over the world. I would never say, I thought I'd never see the day when I would say my first wife. How's that? It's just, I said, I'm not going down that road. However, easier said than done when you're not in it. So
Right.
that's another podcast. So you get out of the marriage, you're surviving. Now, where are you in the work world at this point? Where are you? Education, teaching? What are you doing?
I had always done some kind of volunteer teaching all
Okay.
through the marriage. I volunteered with the Scouts. I volunteered with the church.
Okay.
I I worked for a Methodist evangelist for 3.5 years and did teaching with his ministry. Although, none of the jobs that I really had while I was married to Mike made any money because I didn't need any money.
Okay. Here's a question on that right there. I have a question. I just came into my brain right now. So most of the time with Mark, you were not gainfully employed. Am I correct?
Correct.
Okay. So if you were advising a younger woman who was a younger Debbie looking back, okay, like an angel floating above, okay, hopefully there are angels. God knows I have them. So you're looking back and you say to that woman, you better start taking care of yourself. You better have something to bargain with, so to speak, for your own preservation. Do you think that had an influence on the way you saw the threats or didn't realize the threats of like that you thought that he was going to take every dime you had?
Yes, because I didn't have anything, and I knew that I'd been out of the public school setting for so many years, let my certification expire.
Huh.
You can't just walk right back into a classroom.
So did
So
you get recertified? Did you have,
I did. My attorney looked at me the day Mike filed for divorce and he said, Debbie, you're going to have to brush off that all education degree and go get a teaching job because you're going to need a job that has benefits and vacation time. And I looked at him and I don't even know if I cried or not, but I felt like crying. I said, I've been out of the public school system for 23 years.
ooh,
How can I go back?
gee.
And he said, you need to do it.
So Debbie, we're talking at this stage, excuse me, you're near 50.
Late 40s. Yeah, almost 50.
40s. All right, for everybody in the audience, think about that for a second. Okay. You're, most of us, the world hasn't changed that much in the workplace, are developing our work skills, 30s and 40s, and then, hopefully your 50s, 60s and beyond, you're comfortable enough to live, as we both know, right? Survive, put food on the table, right, for yourself. You take that out of the equation, and now you're left with what you thought was Mr. Wonderful and all this stuff, right? Lollipops and roses, and it's gone. It's gone. And
Yeah.
you're a mom with, I gather you got custody of the children.
By the time the divorce was over,
Oh,
Casey had already gotten married. So she wasn't 17 and I was awarded custody. I had arrangements when he got out of rehab for him to go to a private school where he could catch up with the schooling he missed when he was in rehab and graduate with his graduating class.
and
So
once you finally got legally divorced, did you ever commiserate again with Mark? Ever? Or there was it?
we saw each other, gosh, probably about five years later
Okay.
when Casey bought her first house. She had a little homecoming or housewarming party, and I saw him there. It was strange. He was with his new wife, and of course I was alone. Um, and I behaved myself. It was okay.
Okay. And you're in your early 50s, mid 50s, somewhere in there.
Yeah.
Okay. So listen,
And
go ahead.
and then I really didn't see him or talk to him for years. But in the past 2 years, I've seen him a couple of times, and he even sends me a text every now and then. When I broke my arm last summer, he sent me a text and said, I hear you broke your arm. I'm sorry. When I bought my new house a year ago, he sent a text and wanted to see a picture of the house. Um,
And he's retired now.
he retired at 73.
Okay.
Yep.
Wow. Okay. So let's move. You're now in Georgia. You end up in Florida, or let's talk about number two. Or
Yeah,
everybody
after I taught for 2 years in Georgia,
Okay.
I just needed out of Atlanta.
Okay.
I just needed a fresh start. So I talked to my sister. We had kept the house that my parents lived in, and after they passed away, we rented it. So I asked Joni, I said, would you be willing to let me buy your half of that house and move into it? And she was all about that. That was agreeable to her. So that's what we did. I bought out her half of the house. So it was then mine,
Okay.
and moved myself to Orlando, where
Orlando.
my parents
Okay.
had lived.
And is this where we met number two, who is now deceased, but I can say his name, Courtney?
Yeah. No, actually, Courtney was my next door neighbor in Georgia.
Oh,
And
and he
yeah,
followed you.
pardon me?
He followed you to Florida.
Well, that's a story too. His wife had passed away right about the time Mark got evicted. And he was an alcoholic, and
He being Courtney.
Courtney was an alcoholic.
That's it.
And right before Casey got married, one day she came home from work and said, Mom, Courtney's really lonely next door. She said, why don't you go over and ask him if he'd like to go out to eat with you one night or something? So I thought about it and I was like, I don't know that I want to do that. He's an alcoholic. He used to call and be angry when Mark would leave the dogs outside barking. Mark did that on purpose. He'd like to leave the dogs out there because he knew Courtney would get irritated and call and tell us to make the dogs shut up.
Oh, my.
So, anyway, I thought, well, I don't know. And then one Friday night, I was just really exhausted from the week.
Okay.
And I thought, what the heck? I don't feel like cooking. I feel like eating Mexican, but I don't want to go to a restaurant by myself.
Okay.
So I went and knocked on the door, and he opened it.
Courtney's door.
Courtney's door, right next door, and
No,
he opened the door, and he was all dressed up, and I said, I just wondered if you wanted to go get something to eat tonight. And then he hesitated, and I looked at him and I said, but you're all dressed up. You're already going somewhere. Never mind. If you want to, we'll do it another night. And he kind of cocked his head and he said, no, he said, why don't you go with me? And I said, are you sure? And he said, yeah. He said, where I'm going has all you can eat crab legs for one price, and they've got a band. So why don't you just go with me? So I said, okay.
So Debbie, this is dating, if you will. I know they don't use that word today. This is dating at what age? What are we talking? 58?
48, 49. I wasn't 50 yet.
Well, you were divorced.
Actually, it was still in the
In the works.
separation.
Okay.
The divorce took 2 years.
Oh, okay. All right.
The divorce, because there was so much to fight about.
Okay.
So the divorce took 2 years. So this was after Mike had filed for divorce. I don't remember how many months after, but I already knew it was ending, and I was conflicted and upset and emotional, and was pouring myself into my kids that I was teaching because they needed me and I needed that distraction. So, yeah, so
Go on this hot date, go on this unplanned, spur of the moment date, right?
yes. And that was
You want to say
a
what?
dangerous thing for me to do because we had a nice dinner. The band started playing. We danced a couple of songs. That was great fun. I love that. I mean, when you're moving and dancing and there's music, you can't be anything but happy, right?
Oh, hey, music is language of the soul, man. Ain't no doubt about it. Thank you.
And then a slow song came on, and that was what was dangerous.
Well, you wanna elaborate on that? You want to let them read the details in the book?
I think I'll let them read the details.
Okay.
but I was surprised at how my body reacted. We'll just leave it at that.
You hear that, ladies and gentlemen, and whatever you choose to be out there. In other words, it was hot.
Yeah.
Debbie's motors got overheated. Okay, so let's move
Little bit.
on. So what happens in that relationship? How did that develop?
Well, I told him all along that my plan was to teach for 2 years in Georgia and move to Florida.
Okay,
So he knew from the get-go that I didn't plan to stay next door.
all right.
His kids didn't like when they found out that we were dating. They were both still upset about their mother's death from cancer 2 years before, or 3 years before, whenever it was. And especially his daughter was real upset about that. So
Give us a profile, if you would, on Courtney. Just give us a profile on this gentleman. He's, God rest his soul, he's passed, but give us a profile.
he was a good guy.
Hmm.
He I think his father was in some kind of law enforcement, and I don't remember if his mother worked or not, but he was a twin. He had a twin sister, and she died from Crohn's disease, and an older sister. So he was the baby boy. He was raised in Powhatan, Virginia, and his sisters did cotillion. So he had to learn all the manners and all the dances to do cotillion with his sisters. And he was quite the Southern gentleman. He opened doors.
Wow. So he was, when you say the Southern gentleman, for everybody who maybe hasn't heard that term, unlike Mr. Wonderful,
He never opened doors.
okay, go figure, for himself. So you, and you can say this to this day, and don't let me put words in your mouth. He really was a gentleman.
He was.
Okay. And he lived by himself, right?
Mhm.
And he was a career Navy man, if I'm not mistaken.
No, not career Navy. He was in the Navy. In fact, he was on the Forrestal when John McCain crashed, that plane crashed and the fire broke out on the Forrestal. There, he's in the video with a hose trying to put out the fire. So he was in the Navy. And then he was in sales.
Okay.
His father-in-law had owned furniture stores, and for a while he sold furniture.
And his age compared to you, his age?
He was 7.5 years older than I am.
Okay. All right. And he was,
Oh.
other than the alcohol, he was in one piece for the most part?
Yeah. Yeah. He was in one piece. Other than the alcohol, he was in pretty good shape.
Okay, so
He was strong. He was a fixer like my dad. He built a deck on the back of his house. He built
guy.
things.
I mean, really, he's a man. I mean, really, back in the old.
Yeah, a man's man.
Yeah,
He
of course.
helped. He was one of the scout leaders for his son's Boy Scout troop. When his wife was alive, he and Ellen, I used to watch it. They were always the life of the party. We had a neighborhood swimming pool, and sometimes I would take the kids down there and let the kids play, and I would read a book, but I always stayed to myself because I'm really kind of an introvert. But Courtney and his wife Ellen, they always had a cooler full of beer and handed him out and happy and laughing and just the life of the party.
So A, you knew his wife, and B, I presume in your conversations later, because you end up marrying this gentleman,
Mhm.
Courtney was loyal, faithful to his wife.
Mhm.
So how'd you get married? How'd you end up getting married to him?
Well, I dated him long distance, I think for a year or two after I moved to Florida. And one day I said to him, I said, Courtney, I said, this just isn't going anywhere. I have no intention of moving back to Georgia, and you have no desire to live in Florida. You really are close with your kids. You want to stay here in Georgia where they are. And I get that. So I said, and he had gotten clean and sober before I left. He'd had an incident, and his kids took him to the VA to dry out. And so he was clean and sober when I moved to Florida. but I said to him, I said, your kids aren't in favor of us being together. And, it's just this long distance is hard for me because I think I had 3 dogs most of the time. So whenever I went to Georgia, I had to pack up 3 dogs and take them with me. And it was just hard. And I said, you know what? I said, I don't see this going anywhere. So I really think we should just go ahead and call it quits. And he said, no, 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 no. I don't want to lose you. He said, tell you what, let's go to the jewelry store. I'll buy you an engagement ring and we'll get married.
Oh my.
So I said, are
He was,
you?
was he a Christian? You didn't mention anything about.
See, I'm not absolutely certain. I know he was raised in the church.
Okay.
Both of his sisters, and the older one is still alive, really, really strong Christian. His twin sister had a strong faith. And in fact, he had her Bible after she passed away. And he never walked down the aisle to commit his life to Christ. So he was never baptized, and he never knew whether he was or not. So I don't know. He had a good heart. He was a good man.
Yeah,
But
he wasn't what we used to call. He was what was he? He wasn't atheist.
no, 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 no. He believed in God. He believed that Jesus was the Son of God. He just didn't know whether he believed that Christ was his Lord and Savior.
But
So
that wasn't a problem for you all when you eventually get married. That wasn't a problem. Right?
well, when part of the thing is, I did fall into sexual sin before he proposed to me. And so, or at least what I
Wait a minute
consider
now. Hold, you
sexual
got to
sin.
describe that for the audience. I don't
What?
think, hold it. Stop right there. I don't think anybody, let me see, what are we? We're 70. I don't think anybody past the age of 20 even ever heard that phrase. What, you want to explain that?
I know it's a totally accepted thing right now, but
Beyond.
I've been in so many Bible studies. I know what the Bible says, and you can't pick and choose the verses that you like and throw away the ones that you don't like.
Okay.
So as much as it pains me,
I understand. Keep going.
it was sexual sin to have sex outside of marriage.
Wow.
So
Maybe more problem. Yep. Maybe
I thought if I married him, that would clear that up.
Oh, okay. Wow. There's a lot of ramifications for a test drive. There's a lot of ramifications.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, so for 6 months we were engaged, but he would never let me wear the ring around his kids. So after 6 months, one day I took all of his stuff, left it in his basement, including the ring, and I left him a letter explaining that if he was more worried about what his children thought than about what I thought, then I didn't think we needed to get married. And please don't contact me again.
Ooh.
So for 2 years, I wouldn't talk to him.
Okay.
And then, I don't know, my daughter said something one day, and she said, you really should talk to Courtney again. And he called me or texted me or emailed me or something, got a hold of me, and he said, Debbie, please, please, please let me come down to see you Valentine's weekend. And I said,
Florida.
yeah,
Okay.
down to Florida. I said, I don't know. He said, and he begged, and he said, there isn't a day that's gone by that I haven't thought of you. I love you so much.
Oh, wow.
So I just need to see you. So I said, these are the conditions. If you come down, you will be sleeping in the guest bedroom. Because I didn't trust myself.
No sin. Okay.
I mean, we had chemistry.
I understand. From the dance forward.
Yeah, yeah. So,
it's pretty good control there, girlfriend.
yeah, he came down. He stayed in the guest bedroom all weekend.
Okay.
And begged me to reconsider getting married. He was willing to move to Florida away from his kids. He was willing to tell his kids about us. And
He was all in.
yeah, he said he had dated somebody, but nobody was me.
Okay.
So I said, I've got to think about this. I can't give you an answer this weekend. So I thought about it. I prayed about it. I talked to a couple of friends about it. My best friend, Debbie Calloway, said, absolutely not. Don't do it. And then I had someone else say to me, well, do you love him? I said, yeah, I never stopped loving him. And this male friend said, well, we're not getting any younger.
For sure.
If you really love him, why not? So
That stage
I
of the game, that's a, go ahead. I'm not,
I caved.
now let me ask you a unprofessional from me, meaning I'm not a therapist for God's sake, street therapist maybe back in the day. So what was the difference in the feeling between number one, Mr. Wonderful Mark on the LOVE, the L word, and Mr. Courtney, number two? What would you say?
It was pretty much the same.
Okay. And
There was chemistry with both of them.
okay, got it, got it. Physical attraction.
Yep.
Okay. I would imagine physical intimacy was pretty good. I'm
Oh,
gathering.
yeah.
We all gotta have that. Don't lie if you don't.
Yeah.
Including myself. So and then the Christian.
So he came down, we got married. His kids both showed up.
Okay. Okay.
Even though they probably weren't thrilled, they were, and his son kind of came around and was nice to me after that.
Okay.
His daughter was nice to me, but reserved. But then about 6 or 9 months after we got married, he kept coming up with excuses why he couldn't get a part-time job after he came down. Oh, well, vacation is coming up and our holidays are coming up. And if I'm the new kid on the block, I won't get leave. And, they won't let me have time off to go to Georgia to be with my kids for the holidays. So I need to have to wait until after the holidays. Well, after the holidays, then spring break was coming. So he couldn't do it because spring break was coming. So he always had an excuse why he couldn't go get a job. And then I started noticing strange behavior. After about 9 months, I suspected he was drinking again. And of course, what else did he have to do all day?
Let me ask a question again for all of us above consensual age, but let's say those of us with a little bit of scar tissue in the marital ranks in romance. And I can speak for myself also. Is it not amazing how you can literally live with someone, be in the same room, the same bed, day in and day out? And I'm gathering from this where this story is going on, Courtney, that you did not know that the alcohol was starting to seep back in?
Not right away.
Right away, okay. But it was. It was in fact. Okay.
Yeah, and then I noticed his behavior was changing and he drank vodka. That was his choice. And he usually mixed it with orange juice, so it was hard to smell. So a couple of times I thought I smelled the alcohol smell and I would ask him and he would deny it. And I didn't have any proof.
Did he drive? Did he drive a car? Did he drive a car?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. No DUIs, no accidents?
No, I don't know how, but
Wow. So let's, go ahead.
He became proficient. I mean, when he was married to Ellen, I would say that both of them were probably functioning alcoholics. They both went to work all day. They both held jobs, did well, but starting at dinner time, the cocktail and the drinking probably went on until bedtime. And on the weekends, they were weekend warriors.
Wow. Wow. Whew. Well, I can't say I'm an angel, but not like that. Okay. So let's the audience is going to have to see the details in the book. But let's go to the point where this kind of explodes, and we'll wrap that up, and then we'll move on to number.
Yeah, after about 2 years, it was getting pretty bad. There were times when he was kicking my little 5-pound toy poodle that was a rescue dog and didn't need to be abused anymore. He started pushing me around a little bit, and it was just, I said no. I'd been to Al-Anon because of my son, and so I went back to Al-Anon and listened, and it's like, you know what? I don't have to live this way, and I'm paying all the bills. So guess what? And I tried to get help, and I found out that if I needed to go somewhere, I was going to have to leave my house and leave him in it. And it's like, no, 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 no. That's the only way the women's shelter would let me come. And it's like, no. So I called the police and I said, what can I do? And there were two options: the Marchman Act, which you had to have all kinds of documentation, and the Baker Act. I was familiar with the Baker Act. So it's like, if someone's a danger to themselves or others, they can be hospitalized and observed for 48 to 72 hours. So one night when he was rip roaring drunk and being obnoxious and pushing me around, I said, you know what? I'm not doing this tonight, Courtney. School starts in a week. I said, you need to cut it out or I'm calling the police. And he said, no, you're not calling the police. I said, watch me. So this is back when we had flip phones. I flipped my phone open, and before I could get 911 in, he grabbed it out of my hand and put it in his pocket. Well, I ran for the office because we still had landlines, and I pulled the phone off the receiver, and he knocks it out of my hand, and it's broken all over the office floor. Then I'm running for the phone in the kitchen. It's a corded phone. And he yanks my necklace and breaks it on my way. So now my necklace is on the floor broken. I get to the kitchen and I almost have the 911 dialed, and he unplugs the phone, wraps the cord around my wrist. Well, I managed to get untangled from that and raced to the bedroom where the last phone was.
Hey,
Got into the bedroom, locked the door, called 911. Well, when the police got there, of course, Courtney had my phone in his pocket. They saw the broken stuff all over the office. I had a scratch on my arm from where he wrapped the cord around it. And I said, can you take him to the VA? He needs help. He needs rehab. He needs to be Baker acted. And the police officer looked at me and said, ma'am, you don't get to decide where he goes. He obviously tried to prevent you from calling for help because your phone was in his pocket, and here's a broken phone on the floor. So we are taking him to jail. And I was horrified. That is not what I wanted. It's not what I intended. I wanted him to get help. But I had tried letting his sister know, and she didn't believe the drinking was that bad. I tried to let his son know. His son didn't think the drinking was that bad. So when I called his son to let him know, he was furious. How could you let my dad go to jail? How could you call the police on him and send everything was my fault?
sure.
So,
And you know what, Debbie, in today's modern day, and everybody's now privy to this because of the internet and the media, social media. Excuse me, back when I was a street cop many years, 10, these domestic situations, right where you're at this at that time in this, when the cops come and they arrest them, really that's when the fireworks really begin. Because there's revenge, there's retribution, there's you got the family calling you, there's all kind of things. Okay, so pretty bad scene. Everybody have to get the details in the book. So what happens then?
well, I never saw him again. I did see him on TV, on the TV screen the next morning, because I went to bail him out of jail. And when I saw him before the judge, there was no shame, no remorse, nothing but anger. And it's like, oh. And I had let some girls from my church know to pray for me, that I wasn't going to be in Sunday school that morning. And they called me. And before I could get a bail bondsman, one of them said to me, Debbie, you think he was angry with you last night. What is it going to look like today after spending a night in jail? And I went, oh.
Yeah.
And she said, Debbie, please don't bail him out. And so the two of them came over to my house, helped me pack up all of his stuff. So it was ready for Monday after I got out of school. I rented it on Sunday. I rented a storage unit, a great big one. I think it was a 10 by 20 or something. It was big enough for his Volkswagen, his motorcycle, and his scooter, and all of his stuff. And with the help of AAA and my two friends, we got all of his stuff from my house to the storage unit by, I think it was by 11 o'clock at night. And
Same day, the same day.
the same day, got all done on Monday between the time I got off of school and they got off of work. And because they helped me pack it all up on Sunday.
Okay.
And I left the keys to the storage unit in Sarah's mailbox. And I sent a text message to his daughter that when they got, because they let me know that since I didn't get him out of jail, they were coming down. I said, okay, you will find his driver's license, his glasses, his keys, and all of his belongings in this storage unit. And here's the address where you go pick up the keys, because I didn't want him coming to my house. So
You don't want to interact with him at all at this time.
no, and they kept harassing me for letting him spend the night in jail. And actually, it ended up being 2 or 3 nights by the time the kids got down to pick him up.
Mhm.
So, which was just long enough to get his stuff in storage. So,
So how did you get from that point, which is pretty much a train wreck, really? How did
yeah.
you get from that point to official divorce, an official legal?
I filed for divorce. I hired an attorney, told him what happened, and I filed for divorce. Now, he wouldn't sign the papers
Mhm.
for until the end of the following school year, because he was on my life insurance and health insurance, and he didn't want to give up the insurance. So he knew I could get him off at open enrollment at the end of the school year. So he stayed, he wouldn't sign the divorce papers until the end of the school year.
So would you consider, and I understand, and God rest his soul again, I want to make sure Courtney is now passed on, correct?
Mhm.
That's from
Yeah.
excuse me. So would you consider him a narcissistic in your terms?
No,
No.
no, I don't think he had a narcissistic bone in him.
But he
He
really wasn't
he
like
was a good man that had a disease.
very good. And he was not like Mr. Mark, Mr. Wonderful. No.
No, no. When Mr. Wonderful saw me get sick, he yelled at me and told me to clean it up. When when I had to have a hysterectomy when I still lived in Georgia, Courtney came over and fixed me a bed downstairs because I could only go upstairs or downstairs once a day. He took care of me. He brought me meals. When it was the day I could go upstairs, he would help me go upstairs and made sure I got out of the shower safely and back in bed. He did everything for me. I would not have been able to recover from that surgery without his help.
Yeah. Wow. Well,
He took
God
care
bless
of
him.
me.
Yeah, may God bless him. So now you're out of number 2, and let's move forward to Mr. Brutus. That's
Yeah,
that
by the time I
same
met
name.
Brutus, I really wasn't looking for anybody.
No, audience, you have to read the details, and we're not going to go into all the a little bit of internet dating and a little bit of this and a little bit of that. Nothing too salacious, but you have to read the book. And so let's get a profile on Enter Stage Right, Mr. Brutus. Go ahead and give like a like a Paul Harvey page 2 backdoor profile on him. All right.
Yeah. Well,
At that
well,
stage. At that stage.
I had met Brutus when I was in 10th grade. He went to the same high school we went to. And I don't remember, I must have met him halfway through the year or something like that. And we dated a little bit. He was a lot of fun. But I was still dating other people. And he asked me to go to his senior prom. And I was like, wow, a 10th grader going to the senior prom. That was big.
It was a big deal then. That was almost beyond older man. That was a big deal. Okay.
Yeah, it was a big deal. So we were double dating with one of the really well-known guys in the class. He was editor-in-chief of the newspaper. He helped lead the Young Life group, which is a Christian organization for young people, high school kids, and just a stand-up guy. And he also took a 10th grader. So we double dated. My mom bought me the most beautiful dress, and it had a turquoise top with little daisies on it and a white chiffon skirt that just flowed and twirled. And
You
I
remember those details.
I thought I was a fairy princess.
Everybody, as you age in life, certain things stand out, do they not? And how you are recalling the detail. That's pretty cool. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, I just thought it was so special.
So he
And
wasn't
so we had fun at the prom. I don't remember all the details of it. I just remember how I felt. And then he was going off to New Mexico to go to college. There was he was a talented artist, and I didn't know until many, many years later that he had declared his major as pre-law. I thought he went out there for art classes because he told me there was an artist that taught at this school that he really admired and he wanted to be in her classes. So he sent me a couple of pieces that he did. Actually, one of them framed, and I had it in my house until about 3 years ago.
Oh, your whole life. Your whole life.
Yeah. Yeah. He gave it to me framed, so it was ready to hang on the wall. And it was of my hair done in black marker with no facial features. It was just because my hair's almost always been long. It's always been wavy, and it was a neat picture.
So I would say on that Mr. Brutus had a place in his heart for you back then.
I guess he did. He wrote in my yearbook that he had fallen in love with me, but I didn't know what that meant. At 14, 15 years old, what is love? Right? I had no concept of what love was. So that didn't really mean a lot to me, but he said, I want you to date a lot of guys and have a lot of fun your last 2 years in high school. So I did. I dated a lot of guys, went to dances with different guys,
Nothing special, anyone, right?
No, Kurt was the one that I spent the most time with, but like I said, I kept breaking up with him. But and nobody really did it for me in high school.
So Brutus, number 3, suspect number 3 behind door B, C, excuse me. He does not show up romantically from college, well, other than college, a little incident in college. And
He surprised me one weekend at college, and that did not go well.
Details are in the book on that surprise. Let's just say that Mr. Brutus did not realize that the flower that he took to the prom, his prom in high school, was deflowered. Is that the right word?
Yeah, that'll work.
Okay. So he doesn't show up romantically anywhere until now. So now you're in Florida.
Yeah, we're in 2014.
2014. Wow. Okay, so you're working, I gather.
Oh yeah, I taught for
Oh,
Orange County Public Schools for 13 years.
okay.
When I moved down here, I worked for them and at the same school for 13 years. And
He comes into your
so
life.
I was actually dating a friend of another friend, and one day he just ghosted me. And I was heartbroken over this because I had thought he was the one. We were on the same level intellectually. We had the same education. We had the same background. His parents were even from West Virginia. Um, and I just, one day he just ghosted me.
That was it.
So I, I was at first, I mean, I was heartbroken, but at first I was shocked and sad. Then I got mad.
Hey, you pick up your shoes and you roll. That's all.
Yeah, and I wrote him a 6-page letter, sent it to him, and I was done.
Done. Ah, that's pretty cool. You wrote it out. That's good. Oh, speaking of that, we did discuss before journaling.
Yeah.
Is all of this, didn't you journal after the first 10 years of after college or your marriage, your first one
I
or
think
something?
I started journaling when after I found out about Mark's infidelities,
No, okay.
and I needed an outlet to
Absolutely.
get my thoughts down. So I started journaling then, and I've one of the things his attorney asked for like 20 boxes, big boxes of documents, and one of the things he wanted was all of my journals. And I said to my attorney, I have to give his attorney my journals. I don't want to give him my journals. And the attorney said, well, I'm going to keep all 20 boxes in this back room in my office. And if his attorney wants to look at those 20 boxes of documents, he'll have to come here and look at them, including your journals. And I got a call from my attorney one night, and he said, Debbie, I just wanted to let you know I've been through your journals and they're not going to do anything but help you. So you don't have anything to worry about if they, look at your
And
journals.
did you write that in the first person? Of in other words,
Oh,
looking
when
out?
I write, I just barf it out on paper is the only
Okay,
way I know how to say it.
okay.
Uh, it
You
just,
writing to you, right?
yeah, it's like, I can't believe this happened and blah, blah, it's just like,
Great tool.
it's, it's just an account. And that's, when I've written lots of letters to a lot of people over the years because I express myself better in writing than I do face to face with someone most of the time.
You teach them. Okay, very good. So now you end up hooking up. I'm sorry, that's the wrong terminology in today's world. You end up getting together with Brutus,
Well,
and
Brutus, a friend, my dearest friend from high school, Susie, decided that Brutus and I needed to be reconnected
okay,
after I got ghosted. So she set that up.
looking out for your good.
And I confide Brutus and I had gone on to Sugarloaf Mountain and Great Falls and stuff together in high school, and we could talk for hours. I mean, I you can tell I don't have any trouble talking to people one on one. It's
No
and it took
fire,
me a long time before I could talk to a group.
no fire, but no fire in the romance kitchen.
No, not in high school. It was just we were buddies. In my eyes, we were buddies, and we
So,
could talk about anything and everything for hours and hours and hours.
so your
So
friend brings Brutus into the scene down in.
he comes back and he starts calling me, and we picked up where we left off. We would have long conversations. He would call me. Um, then I said to him, I had confided in him about the one that broke up with me, and we'll call him Mr. Romance, I think, in the book. And he said, yep, I think your assessment is right. And so one day I said, yeah, well, I'm meeting Mr. Romance halfway between our houses to pick up all the stuff I left at his house. And
What was
and
his, what
and
was,
he said, can I go with you?
wow.
And I said, why would you want to do that? You live 2 hours away from me. You're going to drive 2 hours to my house to be at the meeting point at 9 a.m. in the morning? And he said, yeah. I said, why? Do you want to meet him? And he said, no, I just want to spend more time with you. And it just like, this is really weird, but whatever.
Now hold, stop the press right there. Now, Debbie, you got some hash marks on your arm by this time. You got some sergeant stripes of life at this point.
Yeah.
Didn't that ring a bell back to Mr. Wonderful? Like it was like too good to be true, or no? At that stage of the game,
No, because I wasn't interested in a
okay.
romance with
You just
him.
figured you just drag him along and let him come. That's okay.
If that's what he wanted to do, I said, I'm going to the beach afterwards because the beach is my happy place. And I
Okay.
just need to go be at the beach.
What is your profile at this? How old are we talking? What age are you now at this point in this story?
Oh gosh, I'm
Oh,
69 now, and this is you're gonna make me do math in my head.
sorry, then.
I was
That caused-
59 or 60.
Okay.
I must have been 59
And so
and turned 60 before we got married.
he's about 63, 64, somewhere in there.
He's 2 years older than I am.
Okay. So you go through this, you go to the beach, take it from there. I know what to do.
And this is not in the book. When we got out of the car at the beach, I had told him to stay in the car when we got to the meeting place. And he said, why? And I said, just do it. But then the box that he brought, Mr. Morantz brought my stuff in, wouldn't go into the Mustang, the back seat of the Mustang, without Brutus getting out and moving the seat forward to get the box in the back seat. So we had to get out. But anyway, when we got to the beach, I put some lip gloss on before I went out into the sun. And he said, may I kiss those glossy lips of yours? And I just looked at him and I said,
Romance number 3.
no, thank you. I said, no, thank you. I didn't want him to kiss me.
Wow. Debbie, it's the man and the woman. It's the nature. He's a boomer. You know, it's just the way the cycle of life. Who listening out there hasn't been down this road similarly, if you will? Okay, so you got the big smooch going on, and then what?
No, I didn't let him kiss me.
Oh, you didn't?
I told him no.
Ooh. And why, may I add?
I didn't want him to kiss me.
Okay. So
I didn't feel romantically for him. I never did.
when did you? You get married, you must have felt.
But I remembered from high school that he was a really good kisser.
Ooh, okay.
We did lots of kissing in high school. And then, but I always felt like he was safe. I didn't have to worry about him going too far.
Okay.
But
Okay.
I enjoyed kissing him.
Okay.
So, anyway, we spent the day at the beach and came home, and it was late. And I said, you know what? Why don't you just sleep in the guest bedroom? It's too late for you to be driving another 2 hours back home.
Okay.
So he slept in the guest room. I said, by the way, I'm going to church in the morning. If you want to go with me, you're welcome to, if you have appropriate clothes. And so, and anyway, he stayed. He went to church with me. He liked the church, and he was highly critical of a lot of churches and pastors. So I was kind of surprised that mine passed the muster. But
so he was he a gregarious kind of guy?
oh yes, he's very outgoing.
Okay.
Personality wise, he's a lot like Mark.
A lot like Mark. That's where I was going. So there were indicators, if you will, looking back, that he had the N word, the narcissistic, pre-game plan going on, right?
Yeah.
So what prompted you to marry this gentleman?
He told all of my friends how much he loved me, how he had always loved me since I was 14. He had never stopped loving me, and I was his first love, and he wanted me to be his last love.
Ooh,
And he
writing.
fooled Susie. He fooled another friend of mine. And my sister, when I told her that I was seeing Bruce and he wanted to get married, she said, "Wow, you finally got a good one."
Oh my.
And I'm thinking, oh, okay. Because Joni never approved of anybody I dated.
Mm.
She didn't like Courtney.
Right,
She didn't like Mark.
right.
And she really never liked anybody I dated. So, wow, she likes Brutus?
But again, for my own edification in the audience, your friends and your outside you, relatives, whatever, did have an impact on your, on your view. Yeah. No.
They did. I only had one friend that said, "Debbie, don't do this." It was the same one that told me not to marry Courtney. My dearest friend now, Debbie Calloway.
Mm.
So she said, "Debbie, I don't trust him.
Ooh.
I don't like him. Don't do it."
Did you trust her analysis, her assessment?
I saw him as harmless.
Mm.
I and I While I wasn't in love with him, I didn't have that same feeling that I had for Mark or Courtney or my first love, Donnie. I did care about him deeply. I cared about him as a person. I had met his first wife that died from cancer. She was a sweetheart.
Mm.
I had met his son when Debbie Calloway and I were on a road trip one time. We stopped in Tennessee where Brutus was living with his wife, and that's where I met his son. And so
You
we
definitely
had,
had some background. I mean, you definitely
yeah,
had.
we had stayed in touch. I knew, I didn't know his wife well, but she was just a sweet, kind, loving person.
Yeah.
And his son reminded me of my son, a good old boy, kind of redneck.
So you had a lot of indicators that references that kind of made you feel comfortable about making that kind of decision. That's it.
Mhm.
I've never.
And he had been married to his first wife a long time,
Okay.
had, a- a- according to him, had been faithful.
Okay.
Now, as my attorney finally got me to see during the divorce process, she would do this. And this means if his mouth was moving, he was lying. So things that I believed to be true, I don't know whether they are or not,
Wow.
because I don't know about his marriage, his first marriage. I only know what he taught me or told me, but I don't know whether it was true or not.
So how long were you married to Brutus before it went down in flames?
Well, after 4 years of him messing with my money, I cut him off all my credit cards.
Mm.
And a year later, he was starting to be, it was getting close to being physically abusive.
Ooh.
He shadow punched me one day driving in the car, and the next day called and bragged to my son about it. At that point, so this is after 5 years, my son, just before being married for 5 years, my son said, "Mom, you're aware that this is domestic abuse, right?" I said, "Oh yeah, I'm aware that it's domestic abuse." He said, "Mom, it's only going to get worse." I
Right.
said, "Yep, I get that." He said, "Mom, you're not safe." I said, "Okay." And I was I was already in the car with another friend on my way to St. Pete. We were meeting Susie. My friend Debbie Carswell and I were meeting Susie, and we were gonna have lunch together and then go see the lights for Enchant, the Christmas lights. And so I'm in the car and I'm getting all these text messages. "I need to talk to you because this is not okay." In the meantime, he called my daughter And
He being
he,
Brutus.
no, I mean, my son called my daughter
Okay.
and told her what Brutus had told him. And then she starts texting me, Mom, are you okay? I'm worried about you. And so here I am headed to St. Pete, and I'm thinking, here, both of my adult children are at least a 7 or 8 hour drive away from me, and they're both worried about my physical safety.
Uh,
This is not okay.
no,
It is not okay.
not at that stage
So
of the game. No.
when I got home that night, this is my home that I paid for. I thought I took, I slept in the guest bedroom, and actually I had slept there the night before too, after having to deal with him on the ride home. And the next day I moved all of my clothes and stuff out of the master bedroom, put them all in the guest bedroom. I moved all of my toiletries and things out of the master bathroom and into the guest bathroom. And there I stayed for a year,
Yeah.
except
Basically, of Debbie, of a self-separation, so to speak.
Mhm.
Did you start legal proceedings at that point?
No, I was advised to, but I did not.
Oh, you bad girl.
I
Debbie, too, at that stage of the game. Wow.
I
Okay.
was advised to, but I did not. I COVID hit right not too long after that, and so my part-time job teaching life insurance classes disappeared. And so I didn't have anything to keep me in Orlando. So every chance I got, I was part of a support group and still am in the support group at my church on Longwood.
Okay.
And so I would try and be there for Wednesday nights as much as I could to be in those support group meetings. But I frequently took trips to Pensacola to my son's or to Atlanta to my daughter's house. And I would spend a week, sometimes two in Pensacola. And
You were really, for lack of better terminology, you were really living on the lam, kind of just floating around, basically unemployed, right, at this stage of the game, and you needed to be employed, correct?
mhm.
So let's go, and the people are going to have to read, audience, you're going to have to read the details because it's pretty bad what Mr. Brutus, in my unprofessional marital therapist assessment, and everybody knows. At least 50% of us, at least in the boomers, of what a bad marriage financially can become. Wow. I mean, it can make you almost homeless. It can, depending
Mhm.
upon what you, man or woman, whatever the choice is, depending upon your status professionally, economically, in life, you can really take it on the chin. So,
Oh,
sum up, if you will, the what happened in the final divorce proceeding, how you got the house ready to sell, and what he walked away, he being Brutus, what he walked away with. And what was
well,
the total
I,
time?
I realized in June that I was going to run out of my IRA money. I still have an annuity that's got the bulk of my retirement money in it. And I only tapped $10,000 out of it to buy my new house. Other than that, it's still untouched. Um, and I don't plan to touch it until they make me take money out at 72.
Okay.
So it's all qualified money. So I'll have to start taking some out at 72. But I I did have over I had quite a bit of IRA money when I retired. And it got part of it got eaten up with a rental property that got messed up by my friend Brutus, who wanted to handle it for me. And then I used the rest of it once I didn't have any income to pay bills. So I realized by June that I was going to run out of money before the first of the next year. So I had paint already purchased to paint the outside of the house. So I finished painting the outside of the house and made the yard look good. Then I found some paint on sale and painted the whole inside of the house. I put a big chunk, I bought a 10 by 15 storage unit and stored everything that I didn't think I would need for 6 months, and some of the bigger pieces of furniture into storage so I could stage the house so it didn't look crowded, and it made it look light and airy. And it went on the market in November, sold in 10 days, and closing was December 15th.
Okay.
Now, after it sold, I told Brutus that I would be home. I think it was November 15th. It was the 14th or the 15th on a Saturday. And I said, you already said that you would sign divorce papers and we were going to do it without attorneys. So I've got all the paperwork pulled and ready to fill out and sign, and we'll get that filed. And then the day before I left Pensacola to come home, I got a text message from Brutus that said, I'm leaving for Tennessee today. So I asked 3 questions. I can't remember what all of them were, but one of them is, are you coming back? And that was the second question, and that was a no. So I'm thinking, this is odd. I didn't ask any more questions. I just let it be. And when I'm driving home, I'm talking to my friend, Debbie Carswell, and she said, there was that night that you came home and he had a gun in his hand. She said, what if he's just told you he's not there and you're just walking in unawares and he's hiding with that gun? And I went, oh, yeah, because if I'm dead, he gets everything. And he can say that I surprised him, and which is what he pretty much said the first time he had the gun. And I'm thinking, okay, this doesn't feel good. So she agreed to meet me at the house when I got there. And in the meantime, she called the Longwood police department and made sure that someone was there when we got there
Good.
to
Good.
clear the house and make sure it was safe before I walked in. And he gave me the all clear, but he said, based on what she told me, you probably should not be staying here alone. So my friend Susie actually came the next day and stayed a couple of nights with me, and then she had to go home. And my friend Debbie Calloway from West Palm Beach drove up and stayed with me and helped me get everything ready to pack up, and help me get 2 more storage units and figure out how to get the house emptied for closing. But a couple of days after I got there, I started getting these postcards from attorneys who wanted to represent me in my divorce. So I'm like, well, this is weird. How do they know I'm getting divorced? And I went, Debbie, I went to the website for our county and looked up lawsuits with the last name. And lo and behold, the day he left, he had filed for divorce. So I immediately called the attorney that I had talked to in the middle of the summer. And I said, okay, so how much is your retainer and how do I get it to you? Because Brutus has filed for divorce. And I said, but I don't think he used an attorney because I don't think he has any money to pay for one. So she told me how to get her the retainer, and she said, but I'm going to go ahead and look at the website. And she said, oh, yes, he did file for divorce. And oh, yes, he used an attorney. And yes, I can see the document. And no, he's not planning to have you served. And what I think he's going to do, his terms in his divorce say that he doesn't want any of the debt that you two share, but he wants half of the equity in your house. And I said, what?
Wow.
And I already knew that he could get some of the equity because when he ran my credit cards up the first year we were married, he'd put me in a position where I had to refinance the house in order to pay off that debt. And at that time, the only way I could refi was with his Social Security income. So that put his name on my house. So she had already broken the news to me that I gave him a gift of half of my equity, but she was not going to let him take half of my equity without having to pay for half of the debt. So she filed paperwork right away to stop that from happening. And so it was really strange when I talked to the closing company when I went for closing on December 15th. They said, "Oh, yes, your husband has already been here and signed the papers, and he gave us very clear instructions that we're to wire him half of the check when the closing occurs." And I said, "Well, I have paperwork right here that's signed by a judge that says that that's not going to happen." And she says, "Yeah, we're aware that you have the paperwork. And so, no, we will not be sending him a check." So his plan was foiled. So he couldn't have been happy about that.
Well, wow, you jumped through some hoops there, didn't you? That was
Yeah.
really saving the day. Well, my goodness. Debbie, this is a lot. This is a lot of stuff. But you know what? A lot of us boomers and anybody else, right? A lot of
Yep.
us boomers can relate. And my goodness, divorce is brutal. It can be,
It is.
and I would speak from personal experience, yeah, also, but not three. But the legality of it, when you enter in still in this country, now that's probably going to change for you millennials and you Gen Zs. That whole friggin' picture is probably going to change. Although I read in the book that the Gen Zers may be more like us. I don't know about that. Meaning in the long run, they're going to become maybe more conservative and, you know, have a one-on-one relationship and maybe kids and the whole thing. But, you know, when I get done with your experience and you know, of course, I didn't know you beforehand, right? Um, I'm looking, I'm always looking, and I did when I was on the job for many years. You know, what's the punchline? What would you say? Now I know you directed your thing towards narcissistic, abusive men. We got to pick. Hold on, let me finish. Courtney, correct me if I'm wrong, Your Honor. Courtney was not.
No.
Brutus clearly.
Yes.
And Brutus was out, and I say this. Brutus was out for you for some form of destruction, from what I can assess as a former federal investigator, if I may say, at the top level.
It would appear so.
And he set you in the X. He set you up from, you know, I'm not saying in a derogatory to you, but it's pretty obvious. Anybody who reads a book is going to say, whoa, when I got done, I needed to take 3 showers. Okay. The first guy, Mr. Wonderful, was, I think, something that either man or woman or whatever it is today, you can get caught up in that lollipops and roses glasses, and you lose your mind. And you lose your mind, and all kind of things play into it. And yeah, I mean, if you look up the definition of narcissistic, boy, I mean, that was him, according to your view, right?
Mhm.
And his behavior, I should say, also.
Right.
But as Tina Turner, God rest her soul, this week, 2 days ago, the 1984 song, "What's Love Got to Do with It?" What say you, my new girlfriend Debbie? What say you? The other side of the screen. What would you say to your younger self? What's love got to do with it? What does it? Did it? Will it?
Yeah, well, I guess I'm a romantic, and I loved 2 alcoholics and 2 narcissists. I
Okay.
never loved Brutus the way I loved the other 3, but I did care for him deeply. At this point in my life, I I wish a younger Debbie had taken more psychology classes and understood how childhood affects who you become as an adult. Because if I had dug into any of those guys' childhoods, I would have seen dysfunction.
And
And so, and it was unresolved dysfunction.
unresolved dysfunction.
So I think at this point in my life, I think I've pretty much, I will never be 100%, but I keep going to my support group because I keep learning things. Because people can see into me what I can't see about myself.
Absolutely
So
correct.
I need their feedback to help me continue to grow.
But on that, and I ask and I make a statement and speak a little bit for myself, and maybe I'm missing a G. And we've had this discussion before. You hear the feedback. You hear, and this is not a derogatory term, but you hear the noise, right? You hear it. But only the person in the mirror, my dear, is the one that makes the decision. You,
Right.
I shouldn't use the trigger, but any of us, we're responsible for ourselves and saying, you know what? Just the way you said it. I could have, I should have, I could have went here, learned a little bit more about myself, definitely learned more about these gentlemen. If I may use
Mhm.
it. And when we all have dysfunctions, and myself and my bride now of 6 months, everybody, we discuss this all
Yay.
the time. Thank you. We discuss this all the time. And our parents in our generation, and I'm sure today, no different, millennials and Gen Zs, your parents have the effect on you and set that stage for the most part. And then,
Right.
of course, your life is affected by many different experiences. Well, this has been some trip, my dear, into the audience. I'm emotionally drained. Okay.
You are.
For me to say, not really, but it's quite a story, and it needs to be out. And that's easy for anybody to say. But I think you're really kudos. You are. My podcast is called Angel Dogs for a reason. Not the devil, not an angel, somewhere in between, but you're contributing. So this is only a copy of the front of our book. Okay, uh, will be out soon. You have a date on that by any chance?
I don't. I hope to get it to a publisher within the week.
Okay,
And I'm still working on the website to take pre-orders. So it's not the book is done. The pictures are all picked out. I just have to get the book formatted into a publisher.
and you on social media, my dear?
I am on Facebook. I am on Instagram.
Okay, and you're
I am on LinkedIn.
under. Could you give us those unders? LinkedIn.
Uh, on Facebook, I'm Debbie Bias. I'm sometimes hard to get because it's usually only a friend of a friend to find me. Um, I keep my Facebook to keep in touch with old friends and work colleagues, and not so much for the book. Although my friends are celebrating with me. Instagram, I opened up a Debbie Bias author.
Okay,
So, and that one, anybody should be able to find me, Debbie Bias author.
and to wrap up the largest part of your life, which is Christianity, and you
Yes,
told me every morning. Correct me if I'm wrong, Debbie girl. Every morning you are reading a scripture.
I am.
Okay, and you're still in the groups, the support group, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And if people want to ask you about that, what's the best way for them to connect with you on that side?
Oh gosh. I don't even know. Maybe
Can they get it through Instagram or your Facebook? Is there a way if they want to start their own where they're at, or do you have like a denomination, a church?
I am in the process of joining a little church over here where I live in Rockledge, Florida. I thought it was non-denominational when I went,
Okay,
but it's actually oh, what is it? Shoot, I had it in my mind and then I lost it. It's not one of the mainstream, um, but it's contemporary worship. Um,
Okay.
The pastor is a retired military chaplain.
Oh, that's the best, may I add. May I add.
He talks like we're everyday people. He's not up there on stage putting on airs, and
But
he just,
he's a clear man. He walked the walk. No doubt about it.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's very important. A humble walk.
Yes.
Well, any questions you have of me? I'm not I'm not the one with that story. So audience, have at it. When this book comes out, I want you tracking down Debbie. Track her down. And she's going to do an audio book also. You're going to read your own book. Am I correct?
Yes, I am. I've got a couple of friends, and my daughter and her daughter will not read a book. They're all ADHD. They can't sit still long enough to read a book, but they listen to books.
I got a lot of buddies like that. I got a lot of buddies. And this, I have,
So, yeah. My friend Debbie Calloway listens to books all the time, but to actually pick one up and read it doesn't. She said she would read this one because it was mine, but I said, don't worry, I'm going to put it on audio for you.
well, let's stay in touch. Thank you for your contribution to those who have walked your path.
Yeah. And I'm totally aware that it's not just men that are narcissists. I know some narcissistic women. My mother was very mild on the narcissistic scale, but she was, which is part of what made me who I am. But
Here's your path.
yeah, but I'm aware that it goes both ways, and I've actually talked to a couple of men recently that said they need to read that book. So, yeah, I wanted to help people. I wanted to give people hope. I want people to see red flags that I didn't see, and to be aware of what those red flags mean.
Very
Because
good.
even though I saw some of them, I didn't understand what the red flags meant.
And Debbie, is the book still in the final draft where you have lessons learned at the end of every chapter?
Yes.
For everybody, I'm sorry that I failed to mention this, at the end of every chapter, whether it be in college, whether it be when you're in school, pre-college, all the years with Mr. Wonderful, Mark, the years of Courtney, every chapter has a lessons learned, which is really cool. It's called a hot watch or a debrief, whatever. You're looking back and people can see through your eyes and your emotions and what you did, and they can see what you should have learned, what you did learn, and coulda, shoulda, woulda, right? We all
Right.
have that, especially at this stage of the game. Debbie, God bless. Thank you very much. We've spent quite a few hours together, audience. And my goodness, how much you learn. And then when you read, and I read the whole thing, oh, there's a lot of details in there we didn't talk about tonight. So get the book and watch out for Debbie. She's got all her tech gear up and running now. We had a little tech issue, but we got it squared away. And I've enjoyed all of this. And please stay in touch.
You too.
Thank you, everybody. Peace, love, and strength. Take care. We'll see you.